Jim Melgar, was 3 years old when his family immigrated to the U.S. from Guatemala. The Melgar family decided to settle in Houston, Texas. Jim attended Lamar High School in Houston, where he met Sandra "Sandy" McCulloch. The two began dating in 1978, and quickly became high school sweethearts. A few years after high school in 1980, the couple got married. They each started their own careers. Jim Melgar became an IT specialist and Sandra, a vocational nurse. The Melgars lived a normal life. They both had steady jobs and were lucky to have a close circle of friends and family. However, Sandra suffered from a host of different health problems, including lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, hip problems, and grand mal seizures, a disorder that leads to a loss of consciousness and violent contractions. Because of her seizures, Sandra resigned from her job as a licensed vocational nurse, believing she could no longer work effectively. After Sandra quit her job, Jim suggested that the couple start their own business. Over the years, they even got into the real estate business and owned a few rental homes. The two had a daughter, Elizabeth Liz Rose Melgar, in 1985, whom they loved dearly. They routinely went on vacations, and were known to be a kind and loving family. They also joined Jehovah's Witnesses, an austere Christian sect that demands adherence to strict rules of behavior. Those who were close to the couple would say that they were extremely friendly, and would never even get into any fights. On December 22, 2012, Sandra and Jim Melgar wanted to celebrate their 32nd wedding anniversary. Their actual anniversary was on December 12, but due to Sandra's ill health, they couldn't celebrate it on that day. So on the evening of 22nd, they went out to dinner at their favorite Mexican restaurant, Los Cocos. They left the restaurant at around 9 p.m., and then stopped by at a CVS to buy some drink mixers, before heading home. What exactly happened next is still a bit of a mystery, but the couple's celebrations would swiftly come to an end. The next day, on December 23rd, at about 4:30 p.m., Jim's brother Herman and his family arrived at the Melgars' house. Jim and Sandra had previously invited Herman and his family for a get-together that day, so when Herman showed up, he was surprised to find that no one was answering the door. He noticed one of the garage doors was open, so he went through the garage, entered the house, and unlocked the front door for the others. They called out for Sandra and Jim, but still no one answered. As they were walking through the house, Herman's daughter Marissa had a terrible feeling about what they would find. Then they heard a muffled voice coming from the master bedroom, calling for help. Herman sprinted to the bedroom to find a chair blocking the bathroom walk-in closet door. It was wedged under the doorknob. He quickly moved the chair and opened the closet to find Sandra, lying face down inside, her arms tied up behind her back, by what looked like a bathrobe belt, and her feet bound by a scarf. Her limbs were so tightly tied that Herman struggled to remove the bindings. He finally used a pair of scissors to cut her loose. Herman and his wife Maria would later say that Sandra was tied up so tight that there is no way that she could have tied herself up. Once freed, Sandra rushed to find Jim, who was lying in his closet, with only his feet sticking out. Jim was found nude, laying on the floor, with no pulse. He was found with multiple stab wounds and severe blunt force injuries. Sandra was utterly devastated by the unimaginable horror she just experienced. At this point, she was hysterical and was sobbing uncontrollably. Police found that Jim was stabbed and cut 31 times, and had multiple blunt force trauma injuries as well. His legs were tied with a telephone cord, and rope was loosely tied around his chest. Authorities said that Jim was found to have a lot of defensive wounds on his hands, which meant that he tried to fight off his assailant before he was overpowered and killed inside the closet. Aside from the 31 cuts and stabs, Jim was badly beaten in the face and head, causing serious damage to his skull, brain, and facial bones. Authorities noted that drawers had been pulled open, jewelry boxes had been riffled through, and a wallet and a purse had been overturned on the bed. Police found a white blouse and a kitchen knife in the jacuzzi tub near the master bathroom where Sandra was found. The knife had come from the Melgar home, authorities later said. But police also found a locked safe, and a loaded gun hidden from view in the bedroom closet where Jim was found. As paramedics arrived on the scene to give medical attention to Sandra, she told them that her left side of her head was sore, and her joints were stiff and sore. She said that it's the feeling she would have after a seizure. The medical personnel found no bruising or lacerations on her head and also found no bruises or wounds or marks on her hands and ankles, though she was apparently tied up for over 14 hours. The ties had to be cut off due to the fact that they were so tightly bound. Sandra asked to be taken to the hospital only to later say that she did not think she needed any treatment, and decided to leave. During her police interview, Sandra told detectives that she and Jim had gone to dinner at the Mexican restaurant and stopped at a CVS to buy drink mixers. She said she remembered a mysterious car trailing them after they left the CVS parking lot, but that it had turned a different direction at some point. After arriving home, she said she and Jim undressed, and got into the jacuzzi. She said they were having drinks and spoke about their lives, about their future. Jim was getting ready to retire in a few months, after which they were planning to travel. Sometime around midnight, she said, her husband heard the dogs barking and went to go let them into the house. As Jim was taking a while to return, Sandra decided to get dressed and go check on her husband, so she went into the bathroom closet. This is when Sandra says that she completely blacked out. The next thing she remembered was that she was in the closet. She couldn't move and she was sore all over. Her head hurt and she eventually fell back to sleep. Sandra said she never heard or saw her husband being attacked. She told police that she had blacked out after either hitting her head or being struck, and may have had an epileptic seizure. She was in the closet for about 14 hours before her brother-in-law found her. But it appeared that police were suspicious of her story. Detectives indicated they just couldn't understand how she could have been unaware of her husband being murdered in the next room. Sandra and Jim Melgar's daughter, Liz, reached Houston as soon as she could when she heard what happened. When questioned, Liz said that her mother couldn't hold on to things, that she would drop things a lot, was stiff due to her arthritis and had hip replacement surgeries as well. At one point, Sandra was even in a wheelchair as she could not walk on her own. Liz said that it was inconceivable that her mother, who had so many different health issues, could physically attack her father. What's more is the lack of any bruises, cuts or wounds on Sandra, which would surely be present on Jim's attacker, as he fought them off. In contrast, Jim had numerous bruises, wounds and cuts. He was found to have been brutally beaten with a blunt object, which requires a lot of strength to carry out, and which Sandra obviously lacked. A woman of Sandra's size, 5'4", 53 years of age, and with her health issues, it would be very unlikely she could overpower her husband without sustaining any injuries herself. And according to her previous neurologist, it was entirely possible that Sandra suffered an epileptic seizure due to being struck in the head, which would have caused her to black out. When you have a major seizure, your body goes into spasms, and your body would be sore. And you are also likely to suffer memory loss. The two main detectives who were investigating the case believed that it is possible for someone to tie themselves up and place a chair under the doorknob outside the closet. The police would focus on the theory that Sandra staged a burglary and killed her husband in cold blood. One of the main reasons why the police came to this conclusion was based on the fact that Sandra refused to take a polygraph test just a few hours after the murder. She said that she was still shook up and nervous, and that she was afraid that it could be used against her. The investigators let their own biases dictate their actions, as they were convinced from the get-go that Sandra was the killer, even though there was not enough evidence. So they badgered her in an interrogation room about her alleged staging of the false burglary. This continued for a while before Sandra asked for her lawyer. Investigators even requested an arrest warrant for Sandra from the district attorney, within 2 hours of arriving at the crime scene, which in itself was a hasty decision. The district attorney refused, citing a lack of evidence. It would be a year and a half later that investigators would go ahead and arrest Sandra, in the summer of 2014, for murder charges. It took an additional 3 years, but the case finally went to trial in 2017. In court, prosecutor Colleen Barnett argued a possible motive was that Sandy Melgar wanted a divorce, but feared being shunned by her fellow Jehovah's Witnesses. But Sandy's attorneys presented the picture of a happily married couple in court. Barnett told the jury that Sandy lured Jim with sex as part of some sex game, and staged a home invasion. Barnett showed a recorded demonstration of how easy it would be for someone to tie themselves up and place a chair under the doorknob. The defense brought in an expert witness, Billy Belk, who was a homicide detective with the Houston Police Department, who has over 20 years of experience and personally investigated more than 500 murder cases. Belk surveyed the Melgars' house and went over every little detail he could to assess the crime, and also went through all pieces of evidence. And what he found was how poorly the initial investigation was conducted. He found multiple discrepancies in the investigation. Belk found that the paramedics who first treated Sandra were never interviewed, and neither were Herman Melgar and his family, who were the first on the scene. In fact, many of the longtime friends and family members of the Melgars were never interviewed. The police's statement that there was no sign of forced entry was also discounted by the fact that Herman Melgar was able to enter the house with ease. In January of 2013, weeks after the incident, Sandra recovered bits and pieces of her memory, and she remembered a young Hispanic woman during the attack. Sandra said the woman was in her early to mid-20s and was wearing a dark red or a burgundy blouse. The Hispanic woman was angry and was talking to someone who was tying up Sandra from behind her. This information was not shared with the police soon after the incident, because she did not remember immediately. But the police did not believe Sandra's side of the story anymore. Prosecutors also failed to mention that there were a few valuable items which were missing from the house. Belk also stated that police never mentioned the backpack that was found under the car in the garage, which had some jewelry, an Xbox console, some video games. Male and female DNA, not belonging to the Melgars, was found on these items, an important fact which was also omitted in court. The same unknown DNA was found inside the house, on jewelry boxes. The defense also brought up the safe that was inside Jim's closet, which was found to have a bloody print on its handle. This bloody handle was never processed for DNA or prints, as investigators just brushed it off, saying that the prints probably belonged to Sandra. A suspect with a history of violence, drug charges, and robbery was reported to the police by one of the local news crews, as behaving strangely at the crime scene on the evening of December 23. Police chose to investigate this suspect by leaving a business card at his door after 2 failed attempts to reach him. This is where the investigation into this suspect ended. A similar home invasion that was carried out in a surrounding area, with a nearly identical MO, was never investigated for possible connections. The jury deliberated over the case for about 8 hours over 2 days. They were initially split over what the verdict should be, but said that Sandra's story kept changing and that it was suspicious. Based only on speculation, the flimsy motive that was presented by the prosecution was accepted by the jury, and they reached a verdict. In August of 2017, Sandra Melgar was found guilty, and was sentenced to 27 years in prison. In late 2018, famed attorney Kathleen Zellner took on the Sandra Melgar case. Zellner was famous for taking on cases of wrongful convictions. Most notably, she represented Stephen Avery and Ryan Ferguson. In 2019, the Truth and Justice podcast host Bob Ruff announced a $20,000 reward on information on the real killer of Jamie Jim Melgar, who is believed to be still out in society. Sandra Melgar made multiple appeals, but all have been rejected. Her family and friends, including her daughter, strongly believe in her innocence, and said that they will continue to fight for her freedom. Thank you for watching, and we hope you found our video interesting. Like, comment and subscribe for more fascinating unsolved mysteries.